Always good to talk to the Burchie kid. What's up, my man?
Hey, fellas. How we doing? Happy Friday, as always.
Yes.
All right, well, yeah, Friday. I know you love Fridays.
Hey, man. Who doesn't love a good Friday and
That's
a
right.
cold beer?
What was it you were doing? What do you call it? The Miller Lite fine Pilsner post game
last week for the first time after the game. The Miller Lite Minute, which is 3 gulps of 16 ounces of fine Pilsner beer and 3 thoughts on the game that I just watched. So you guys can look forward to seeing those for the rest of the season. I've already begun thinking about the 2-minute drill, which would be 2 beers, 6 gulps, and 6 thoughts in 2 minutes. So we'll see if we can hammer that one out soon.
All right, slow down.
This is the most on-brand bit of all time.
Well, and hey, I do want to make note of this for anyone who might have been watching last week's Miller Lite Minute. I walk home because I live downtown from Ford Field after those games, so I was not going directly behind the wheel after that. Let it be known that I was watching.
Thank you for the clarification. So it's the biggest news today. Kirby Joseph doesn't look good, huh?
Doesn't look good at all. Hasn't looked good for a while here. I'm beginning to seriously doubt whether we'll see Kirby Joseph again this season. Dan acknowledged that at this point he's obviously an IR candidate. If they were to put him on IR now, that would knock him out for the rest of the season. It would leave open the possibility of a playoff return. I wouldn't put much stock in that. So, look, between Joseph now being unavailable for at least this Sunday and losing Brian Branch for the season, the back end of this defense is obviously severely compromised against a quarterback who's playing as well or better than anyone in the NFL right now. And then the other note from practice is that Taylor Decker was not out there for the 3rd straight day. Now, that just might be a simple case of the Lions giving the veteran some rest and some maintenance, but typically when they've rested him this year and he's played the following Sunday, he's at least practiced in a limited capacity on Friday. So that bears watching on Sunday, also against the defensive line that has 2 major weapons on the outside, and Jared Verse and Byron Young.
So with that update, who have they been rotating in at left tackle? I mean, obviously Dan Skipper gets some run there, but is Miles Frazier, who can play both tackle and guard, has he gotten a chance to play outside there? Manu I guess he's back at practice too?
Yeah, Manu's still working off to the side, so I wouldn't anticipate his return this weekend. While Miles Frazier has been repping at tackle and guard in practice, all of his tackle reps have come at right tackle.
Okay.
So I don't see him as a candidate to step in for Decker on Sunday. The most obvious replacement would be Dan Skipper. But, I think we can all agree Dan Skipper is better suited to play as that extra offensive lineman in jumbo packages than he is as your starting offensive tackle. Verse and Young are obviously big problems. Jared Verse was a guy the Lions really liked in the 2024 draft. He ended up being snatched up by the Rams, 19th overall, just, I think, 5 picks before the Lions traded up for Terrion Arnold, and he's taking his game to new heights this year as well as Young. Briefly on the secondary, I do want to mention this. For all of the criticism that Brad Holmes has justifiably faced this year for maybe the lack of depth at edge, and the leaky offensive line, give credit where it's due. The depth pieces that he's added in the secondary have paid dividends this year, from Rock Yassin at corner to Avonte Maddox and Thomas Harper at safety, who are now your starting safety, to even less heralded guys like Whiteside and Mollett. And we'll see here if Jalen Mills and DeMonte KZ factor in as well. But I do think it's worth appreciating that the moves they have made in the secondary have paid off this year.
KZ is interesting. He has been a playmaker, but when you're on the street, that tells me has been is the key part of this statement. But is there something left in the tank there?
It's a good question. I mean, he once upon a time led the NFL in interceptions. That was all the way back in 2018 when I was still trying to drink my age on my birthday. I maxed out at 25 one year in beers. I think right now, just given the way the roster is constructed, Mills is probably ahead of KZ. Mills is on the active roster, KZ on the practice squad. So Dan Campbell today was very confident and almost bullish in the guys they have available at safety right now, speaking mostly about Harper and Maddox. So they don't feel like they need to change their defense and their scheme despite losing Branch and Joseph. And if Maddox and Harper can play as well as they have played in place of those guys, it might not be the major setback that it feels like it is on paper.
Well, we got the Cowboys to turn it over 3 times last week. The Rams, they are very reluctant to give up the football. Matthew Stafford has been incredibly efficient. The offensive line does a great job of protecting him as well. Can the Lions get a rush on Matthew Stafford to kind of force his hand a little bit and maybe even create a turnover or two?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, he had gone, I think, 10 weeks without throwing a pick, and the Panthers ultimately got him for 2, and they not coincidentally won that game. I think the Lions can. What gives me pause is just how heavy the Rams play on offense. I think you guys have probably made note of how much 13 personnel they deploy, more than any team in the league. So it's a different front than the Lions saw last week with the Cowboys. Like, even defensive line coach Casey Rogers noted that today. You know, it's a little easier when teams cooperate and just give you 2 short edges, and you can burn those edges with your pass rushers. It'll be a different looking offensive line for the Rams, and this is a team that has allowed the fewest sacks in the NFL this year. I don't think Stafford's been sacked more than twice in a game since September, but the Lions did make a pretty significant philosophical shift last week. It wasn't personnel, it wasn't even scheme. It was just taking the reins off of their pass rushers up front. And as Hutchinson said, we have been struggling, especially in play action sets, heavy protection, to transition from defending the run to rushing the passer. And so we just rushed last week with a pass first mentality, even when it might be a run. They felt like that helped them get home a little bit more quickly. And talking with Jack Campbell about that this week, he was like, look, for most of this season, pretty much all of this season, anytime the defensive linemen had had games or stunts planned against the pass, and I sensed a run coming before the snap, I would kill those games and make those guys get in the run fit. And he was like, honestly, they kind of hated that. And so for the first time last week, they told him, nah, man, you're done making that decision. We're rushing the passer. So it'll be interesting to see if they continue that approach. But that was one thing that I did think helped Hutch and Muhammad last week.
Okay, when that's all said and done and we get into the last couple of critical games of this season, who do you think is going to be the starting interior offensive line with Mahogany coming back, Frazier showing some promise? You got Ratledge in there that's probably entrenched, and the veteran in Graham Glasgow. How do you think, and Tristan Colon gets some run, and Dan always mentions him. How do you think that thing shakes out, and can it be a good group?
Yeah, I think it shakes out the same way that the Lions started this season. I think they go back to that original alignment with Mahogany at left guard, Glasgow at center, Ratledge at right, and then obviously your 2 stable tackles. That group was an asset at times earlier this year. I think back to that Ravens game when they piled up, I think, the most rushing yards ever at home against a John Harbaugh defense. And, that's the version of themselves they would like to get back to. I did think that Frazier played pretty well last week in his limited reps. And there's a ceiling there that I think the Lions are excited to explore, maybe even at tackle moving forward. But I don't think Mahogany will play this Sunday. I think he's still a week away. So more immediately, I think we'll see more of what we saw last Thursday, this Sunday, with Cologne and Frazier rotating, and then Glasgow and Ratledge beside them. So, can it be a strength? I'm not sure it was consistently enough early this year to assume that it will be, but maybe some fresh legs in Mahogany are just the boost this team needs.
Well, speaking of fresh legs, Tom Kennedy has really made his mark the last couple of weeks since coming back to the roster, not just as a wide receiver, but in the return game. Khalif Raymond's coming off an injury. What's his status? And, how much of a lift can Tom Kennedy really give this team moving forward?
Yeah, so I think Raymond will be back out there on Sunday, and he will reprise his role as punt returner. But as Dave Phipps, special teams coordinator, said yesterday, Tom Kennedy is now this team's kick returner. He has done enough to lay claim to that job. That was mostly Jacob Saylor's getting those reps this season, but you can't ignore what Kennedy did in his 2 games. I mean, 6 returns, and he averaged 33.5 per return. That ranks second in the NFL this year among kick returners who have more than 1 return. He has really played that well, and what an incredible story, man. Like, a guy who even in college went 3 years without playing a snap of competitive football while he was tearing it up on the lacrosse field. A guy who played professional lax before he played professional football, and a guy who has spent most of his 7 years here, 7 years now, toiling in the shadows on the practice squad, and gets a a huge opportunity last week, national TV against the Cowboys, the brightest moment of his career, and helped spark the Lions to their biggest win of the season. And I think the way the NFL kickoff has changed with the new dynamic kickoff is especially suited to Tom Kennedy, who is quick more than fast, who is built for scurrying more than scorching, and that dynamic kickoff tightens the field and it places a premium on shiftiness, and those are the qualities that Tom Kennedy has on top of being just utterly fearless. And so I think he will maintain his role on special teams for this team, and if injuries arise again at their receiving core, they have all the trust in the world in him to step in there and do his job.
Final thing, Burchie, is do they win this game? And if not, would you be stunned if they won this game?
No, I wouldn't be stunned if they won it. This is the kind of game the Lions have gotten up for in the past. I have a hard time believing that they can slow down Stafford and Puka and Devontae Adams enough on Sunday. But we recorded our Lions game day live show last night, where I'm on a rather incredible 8-game losing streak in the picks, and so I've just begun on behalf of the city of Detroit picking against the Lions every week now, knowing that will inevitably spark them to a win. So I'll say here too, in continuation with that, Rams 30, Lions 23. But I do think they can win this game. I think. And for all the focus on Puka Nacua, you got to keep Devontae Adams out of the end zone on Sunday. Leads the NFL this year with 14 receiving touchdowns, and I absolutely love what Kelvin Shepard said about defending him yesterday. He said, it comes down to the player remembering the coaching, fundamental details. You see a lot of guys hopping and reaching. Now, that sounds good. Me standing up here and saying that, he'd probably have my ass hopping and reaching too. So one of those guys on the outside, either Amik Robertson or DJ Reed, will have to handle that matchup. And if they can keep Devontae Adams out of the end zone, I'll pick the Lions to win on Sunday.
Wow. All right, so when do we see you next on TV?
Well, you'll see Game Day Live on Fox 2 on Sunday morning, and I'll be in there live 11 o'clock on Sunday night breaking down that game and all things Michigan football, I guess, with the great Bob Wojnowski. So catch us there. Hey, a nice quiet week for you, huh, Karsch?
Good God. Unbelievable. Take care, Burchie. Man. Thank you.
All right, fellas. All right, talk next time. See ya.
There he is. The Burchie Kid joins us every Friday here on Karsch and Anderson on 97.1.